She was assigned admin duty, kept off combat rosters. Too delicate, they said. But when the explosion hit the convoy, and the medic was down, she crawled through fire, lifted the bleeding soldier onto her back, and dragged him half a mile through enemy territory. Delicate? No. Unbreakable. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about proving strength comes in forms others don't expect, and how true courage emerges when lives are on the line, consider subscribing for more content that explores how the underestimated often become the heroes when everything falls apart. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across Forward Operating Base Thunder in Helmand Province, Afghanistan, where the administrative offices hummed with the mundane but essential paperwork that kept military operations functioning despite the constant threat of Taliban attacks just beyond the perimeter wire. At 0630 hours on a sweltering August day in 2011, the temperature was already climbing toward another 115-degree afternoon that would test equipment, personnel, and the patience of soldiers who had been deployed for 7 months in one of the most dangerous regions of the country. Specialist Jessica Chen sat at her desk in the Personnel Administration Center, processing casualty reports and medical evacuation requests with the systematic precision that had made her indispensable to the administrative operations that supported over 3,000 soldiers spread across dozens of forward positions throughout the province. At 24, she appeared almost fragile compared to the infantry soldiers who rotated through the admin center, 5 feet 2 inches and 115 pounds with delicate features that reinforced the stereotype that had kept her assigned to rear echelon duties throughout her deployment. Her small hands moved efficiently across computer keyboards and paperwork that documented the harsh realities of combat operations, processing reports of wounded soldiers, equipment losses, and tactical engagements that occurred daily in a theater where the enemy controlled significant territory and maintained the initiative through guerrilla tactics and improvised explosive devices that claimed American lives with devastating regularity. Around her, the admin center buzzed with the controlled chaos of military bureaucracy managing life-and-death logistics. Medical evacuation requests required immediate processing to coordinate helicopter flights that would carry wounded soldiers to advanced medical facilities. Casualty notifications needed precise accuracy to ensure families receive correct information about their loved ones' injuries or deaths. Supply requisitions determined whether forward positions would have adequate ammunition, water, and medical supplies for continued operations. Chun called out Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, the non-commissioned officer in charge of personnel operations whose responsibilities included managing the administrative workload that had tripled since the deployment began. I need you to expedite the medevac paperwork for the casualties from yesterday's patrol. The helicopters are standing by, but we can't launch without completed documentation. Jessica looked up from the casualty report she was preparing, her voice carrying the quiet competence that had characterized her administrative work since arriving in theater. Already completed, Sergeant Rodriguez. The paperwork is ready for transmission, and I've coordinated with the medical unit to ensure patient records are available for the receiving hospital. Rodriguez nodded with the satisfied expression of a supervisor who had learned to depend on Jessica's attention to detail and systematic approach to administrative procedures that could mean the difference between timely medical care and preventable deaths due to bureaucratic delays. Outstanding work, Chun. I know it's not glamorous, but accurate admin work saves lives just as much as combat operations. The infantry guys may get the recognition, but they couldn't function without the support you provide. What Rodriguez and the other administrative personnel didn't fully understand was that Jessica's assignment to rear echelon duties hadn't been her choice. During pre-deployment training, she had requested assignment to forward combat positions where her medical training and language skills could contribute directly to mission success. But company leadership had determined that her slight physical build made her unsuitable for the demands of combat operations. Her background included completion of combat medic training with honors, qualification as a designated marksman, and fluency in Pashto that made her valuable for interaction with local populations. But medical officer recommendations had emphasized concerns about her ability to carry wounded soldiers or heavy equipment over the difficult terrain that characterized combat operations in Afghanistan's mountainous regions. The decision to assign Jessica to administrative duties reflected institutional assumptions about physical requirements for combat effectiveness that prioritized obvious strength characteristics over technical competence, medical knowledge, and the mental resilience that often determine survival outcomes under extreme stress conditions. Captain Sarah Williams, the company commander whose responsibility included personnel assignments and operational planning for over 200 soldiers, entered the admin center carrying tactical maps and operation orders for the day's scheduled convoy movements through territory where Taliban forces maintained active resistance against coalition forces. Chun, I need you to coordinate administrative support for today's supply convoy to forward operating base Mitchell, Captain Williams announced, spreading tactical maps across Jessica's desk. The route includes several high-threat areas where previous convoys have been attacked, so medical evacuation planning needs to be precise and immediately available. Jessica studied the convoy route that showed movement through the Sanjin Valley, where Taliban forces had demonstrated capability to execute coordinated attacks using improvised explosive devices, small arms fire, and rocket-propelled grenades that had disabled previous convoys and caused multiple casualties among American and coalition forces. Ma'am, I'd like to accompany the convoy as medical support, Jessica said, her voice carrying professional confidence despite knowing that such requests had been denied repeatedly throughout the deployment. My medic training and language skills could provide valuable capabilities if the convoy encounters medical emergencies or needs to interact with local populations. Captain Williams' expression reflected the institutional assumptions that had guided Jessica's assignment to administrative duties since the beginning of the deployment. Chun, I appreciate your willingness to volunteer, but convoy operations require personnel who can handle the physical demands of combat operations under extreme conditions. Your administrative work is too valuable to risk in forward positions. The response exemplified the military culture that evaluated combat readiness based on obvious physical characteristics, while undervaluing technical skills, medical knowledge, and psychological resilience that often proved more important than pure physical strength for survival and mission success under actual combat conditions. Jessica accepted the decision without argument, understanding that challenging personnel assignments could be interpreted as insubordination regardless of her qualifications or motivations for requesting combat duties. She returned to processing administrative paperwork while the convoy prepared for departure on a mission that would test every assumption about combat readiness and survival capabilities. The convoy consisted of 4 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles carrying supplies, ammunition, and personnel to forward operating base Mitchell, located 25 kilometers northwest of FOB Thunder through territory where Taliban control was contested and coalition forces faced constant threats from hidden enemies who knew the terrain and maintained support from local populations. Staff Sergeant David Martinez commanded the convoy with experience gained through 6 previous deployments and intimate knowledge of Taliban tactics that had evolved to counter American equipment advantages and training superiority. His vehicle crew included some of the unit's most experienced combat soldiers, but their confidence was tempered by awareness that previous convoys through the same route had suffered casualties from enemies who controlled the initiative and timing of engagements. All vehicles, this is convoy leader, Martinez transmitted over the tactical radio network as the 4-vehicle formation departed FOB Thunder at 0800 hours. Route clearance indicates no recent IED activity, but maintain maximum vigilance and prepare for contact at any time. We've got good air support and quick reaction force backup if things go bad. The convoy moved through the compound gates and onto the dusty road that would carry them through several villages where civilian populations included Taliban sympathizers who provided intelligence about American movements to insurgent forces planning attacks against coalition supply lines and patrol routes. Back at FOB Thunder, Jessica continued processing administrative paperwork while monitoring radio communications that provided updates on convoy progress through territory where previous missions had encountered everything from small arms harassment to complex ambush operations involving multiple enemy positions and coordinated attacks designed to disable vehicles and inflict maximum casualties. Her medical training enabled her to understand the significance of tactical reports describing terrain features, population centers, and potential ambush sites that could affect medical evacuation procedures if the convoy encountered enemy contact and sustained casualties requiring immediate treatment and rapid evacuation to advanced medical facilities. At 0930 hours, Jessica was reviewing medical evacuation procedures when the tactical radio erupted with desperate transmissions from the convoy that was reporting enemy contact and requesting immediate support for casualties resulting from a coordinated Taliban attack that had disabled 2 vehicles and wounded multiple soldiers. Thunder Base, this is convoy leader. Martinez's voice carried over radio static and background explosions. We're taking effective fire from multiple positions. IED strike disabled our lead vehicle. We have multiple casualties and need immediate medevac support. Enemy fire is preventing movement to casualty collection point. The radio transmissions painted a picture of disaster unfolding in real time as the convoy found itself trapped in a coordinated ambush that had been precisely planned to exploit the route's terrain features and maximize casualties while preventing effective response or evacuation procedures. Jessica immediately began implementing emergency medical evacuation procedures, coordinating with helicopter units and medical personnel to prepare for casualty treatment and evacuation from a contested landing zone where enemy fire would complicate rescue operations and endanger additional personnel. Chun, get on the radio with medevac operations, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez ordered as the admin center transformed into an emergency coordination center. We need immediate helicopter support, but the landing zone is hot and they can't get in until we suppress enemy fire. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly as radio reports indicated that the convoy's medic had been wounded in the initial IED explosion and was unable to provide medical treatment for other casualties who were bleeding and required immediate intervention to prevent deaths from treatable injuries. Thunder Base, we need immediate medical support. Martinez transmitted with increasing urgency. Our medic is down, and we've got soldiers bleeding out. Enemy fire is keeping us pinned down and preventing casualty evacuation. We need medical personnel who can reach our position and provide treatment until medevac arrives. Captain Williams entered the admin center as reports continued documenting a tactical situation that was approaching catastrophic failure, with multiple wounded soldiers trapped under enemy fire and limited options for rescue or medical support that could prevent preventable deaths. Ma'am, Jessica said, her voice carrying quiet determination despite the chaos surrounding the emergency response efforts. I can provide medical support to the convoy. My training qualifies me for combat medic duties, and I know the route well enough to reach their position. Captain Williams' response reflected institutional assumptions that had guided personnel decisions throughout the deployment. Chun, that's not your job. We'll coordinate with other units to provide medical support. Your administrative duties are too important to risk in combat operations. But the tactical radio continued transmitting reports that painted an increasingly desperate picture of wounded soldiers whose survival depended on immediate medical intervention that wouldn't be available through normal channels given the enemy fire that was preventing helicopter evacuation and ground reinforcement. Jessica made a decision that would challenge every assumption about combat readiness and physical requirements for military effectiveness under life-threatening conditions. She gathered medical supplies, weapons, and equipment necessary for independent movement to the convoy's position, understanding that her actions contradicted direct orders but could save lives that would otherwise be lost to bureaucratic hesitation. I'm going to help them, Jessica announced to Staff Sergeant Rodriguez as she prepared to leave the admin center carrying medical equipment and survival gear necessary for movement through enemy-controlled territory. Those soldiers need medical care that I can provide, and waiting for official authorization will cost lives. Rodriguez recognized the determination in Jessica's voice and the professional competence that had characterized her administrative work throughout the deployment. Despite regulations that prohibited unauthorized departures from base, he understood that the convoy's survival might depend on immediate medical support that Jessica was qualified to provide. Chun, if you're going to do this, take extra ammunition and communications equipment, Rodriguez said, making a decision that reflected practical military necessity over bureaucratic procedures. Stay low, move fast, and get those soldiers the medical care they need. Jessica departed FOB Thunder at 0945 hours, carrying 40 pounds of medical supplies, ammunition, and communication equipment necessary for independent movement through territory where Taliban forces maintained active resistance and controlled many of the routes between American positions. Her movement to the convoy's position required navigation through terrain that included open areas where enemy observation could direct fire against individual targets, villages where civilian populations might include Taliban supporters, and natural obstacles that channeled movement through predictable routes where ambushes could be established. The systematic approach that had characterized Jessica's administrative work translated directly to tactical movement as she used terrain features for concealment while maintaining awareness of potential enemy positions and escape routes that would be necessary if she encountered hostile forces during the movement to reach wounded soldiers. Her medical training had included instruction in tactical movement and individual survival techniques, but theoretical knowledge was being tested against physical reality in an environment where mistakes would result in death or capture by enemies who had demonstrated willingness to torture and execute captured American personnel. Radio communications indicated that the convoy's tactical situation continued deteriorating as enemy fire intensified and ammunition supplies decreased, while wounded soldiers required medical treatment that wasn't available through normal evacuation procedures due to the contested nature of the landing zone. Jessica's movement through enemy territory required 2 hours of careful navigation through terrain that challenged her physical capabilities while testing mental resilience and tactical decision-making under stress conditions that exceeded any training scenario she had experienced during pre-deployment preparation. At 1,145 hours, Jessica reached the convoy's position where she found a tactical situation that was worse than radio reports had indicated. The lead vehicle had been destroyed by a massive improvised explosive device that had killed 2 soldiers instantly and wounded 4 others, including the unit's combat medic who was unconscious from blast injuries and blood loss. Staff Sergeant Martinez was coordinating defensive fire from a position behind the disabled vehicle when he noticed Jessica approaching with medical supplies and communications equipment. His expression combined relief at seeing medical support with amazement that someone had successfully moved through enemy-controlled territory to reach their position. "Chun, thank God you're here," Martinez said as enemy bullets impacted around their position. "Rodriguez is bleeding bad from shrapnel wounds, and Johnson has chest injuries that need immediate attention. Our medic is unconscious, and we can't get medevac in here until we suppress this enemy fire." Jessica immediately began assessing casualties with systematic medical procedures that had been drilled during combat medic training, but never applied under actual combat conditions where enemy fire and time pressure created stress levels that challenged basic medical decision-making and technical execution. Private Rodriguez had suffered severe shrapnel wounds to his legs that were causing significant blood loss, but could be treated with pressure bandages and hemostatic agents if applied correctly under field conditions. His survival depended on immediate medical intervention that would control bleeding and prevent shock until helicopter evacuation became possible. "Rodriguez, I'm going to apply pressure bandages to control the bleeding," Jessica said, her voice carrying professional calm despite the enemy bullets that continued impacting around their position. "Stay still and let me work. You're going to be fine, but I need to get this bleeding stopped immediately." Her medical treatment procedures were executed with precision that reflected comprehensive training and natural medical aptitude, but working under enemy fire added complexity that tested every aspect of her technical knowledge and psychological resilience under extreme stress conditions. Specialist Johnson's chest injuries were more serious, requiring immediate intervention to prevent tension pneumothorax that could cause death within minutes if not treated properly. The medical procedures needed to save Johnson's life required precise execution under conditions that challenged even experienced combat medics. Jessica's treatment of chest trauma demonstrated medical competence that exceeded basic combat medic training and suggested natural aptitude for emergency medicine under extreme conditions. Her systematic approach to life-threatening injuries enabled effective treatment despite environmental factors that would have overwhelmed less prepared medical personnel. While providing medical treatment, Jessica also coordinated with Staff Sergeant Martinez to establish improved defensive positions and communication with support elements that could provide fire support and medical evacuation once tactical conditions allowed helicopter operations in the contested landing zone. Martinez, if we can suppress enemy fire for 15 minutes, medevac can get in here and evacuate our casualties, Jessica said while applying chest seals and monitoring Johnson's respiratory status. I can provide medical support while you coordinate defensive fire, but we need to work together to create conditions for successful evacuation. The next 2 hours tested every aspect of Jessica's medical training, tactical awareness, and physical endurance as she provided continuous medical care for wounded soldiers while helping maintain defensive positions under sustained enemy fire that prevented helicopter evacuation and reinforcement. Her medical interventions included advanced trauma treatment procedures that kept critically wounded soldiers alive despite injuries that would normally require immediate hospital care. The systematic approach that had characterized her administrative work enabled effective medical care under conditions that challenged experienced combat medics. At 1,430 hours, coordinated airstrikes and artillery fire successfully suppressed enemy positions enough to allow helicopter medical evacuation of wounded soldiers whose survival had depended on Jessica's medical interventions during the critical hours when professional medical care wasn't available through normal channels. Outstanding medical work, Chun, Martinez said as the wounded soldiers were loaded onto evacuation helicopters. Rodriguez and Johnson are alive because of your medical skills and courage. You saved their lives under conditions that would have challenged any combat medic. Jessica's medical performance under actual combat conditions had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded institutional assumptions about physical requirements for combat effectiveness, proving that technical competence and mental resilience often mattered more than obvious strength characteristics for mission success. The medical evacuation helicopter carried Jessica back to FOB Thunder along with the wounded soldiers she had treated, where her unauthorized departure from base and successful rescue mission would require official investigation and administrative action despite the positive outcomes that had resulted from her decision. Captain Williams was waiting at the helicopter landing zone when Jessica returned from the convoy rescue mission, her expression combining relief at Jessica's safe return with concern about the disciplinary implications of unauthorized departure from assigned duties and violation of direct orders. Chun, we need to debrief your actions today, Captain Williams said as medical personnel transferred wounded soldiers to the base medical facility for advanced treatment. Your medical work probably saved lives, but leaving base without authorization violated direct orders and established procedures. Jessica understood that her actions would require formal investigation and could result in disciplinary action regardless of the positive outcomes that had resulted from her medical interventions during the convoy ambush. Military discipline required adherence to orders even when individual initiative might produce better tactical results. Ma'am, I understand that my actions violated orders, but those soldiers needed medical care that I was qualified to provide, Jessica replied, her voice carrying professional calm despite the potential consequences of her decision. I accept responsibility for my actions and any disciplinary measures that result. The investigation into Jessica's unauthorized rescue mission revealed that her medical interventions had been technically correct and probably saved the lives of 2 soldiers who would have died from treatable injuries if medical care had been delayed until official evacuation procedures could be implemented. Medical personnel who examined the wounded soldiers confirmed that Jessica's trauma treatment had been executed with precision that exceeded basic combat medic training and demonstrated advanced medical knowledge that had enabled effective care under extreme conditions. Specialist Chin's medical interventions were technically perfect and probably life-saving, reported Captain Davis, the base medical officer whose evaluation would influence any disciplinary action. Her treatment of chest trauma and hemorrhage control exceeded what we would expect from personnel with her level of training. The investigation also revealed that Jessica's movement through enemy territory and successful arrival at the convoy position had required tactical skills and physical endurance that challenged assumptions about her suitability for combat operations based on physical appearance and administrative assignment. 2 weeks after the convoy rescue mission, Jessica received notification that instead of disciplinary action, She was being recommended for the Bronze Star Medal for heroism and the Combat Medical Badge for providing medical care under enemy fire, recognition that validated her medical competence and combat effectiveness. The awards reflected official acknowledgement that Jessica's actions had saved lives and demonstrated capabilities that exceeded institutional assumptions about physical requirements for combat effectiveness, proving that technical competence and mental resilience often determine mission success more than obvious strength characteristics. Captain Williams personally presented Jessica with orders reassigning her from administrative duties to the position of senior combat medic for the company's forward operating positions, where her demonstrated medical skills and tactical competence would be utilized for missions requiring advanced medical support. Chun, your performance during the convoy rescue proved that we misjudged your capabilities, Captain Williams said during the reassignment ceremony. Your medical skills and tactical competence demonstrate that you're exactly the kind of combat medic we need for our most challenging missions. The reassignment reflected recognition that combat effectiveness couldn't be accurately assessed based on physical appearance or traditional assumptions about strength requirements, but required evaluation of technical competence, mental resilience, and performance under actual operational conditions. Jessica's subsequent service as a combat medic validated the decision to reassign her from administrative duties, with medical interventions that saved numerous lives during combat operations throughout the remainder of the deployment. Her systematic approach to trauma medicine and tactical competence under fire established her reputation as one of the unit's most effective medical personnel. 6 months later, Staff Sergeant Jessica Chun was selected for advanced medical training that would prepare her for assignment as a special operations medic, where her demonstrated capabilities under extreme conditions qualified her for the military's most demanding medical assignments. The special operations assignment reflected recognition that Jessica's medical competence and tactical skills exceeded normal combat medic capabilities and warranted utilization in operations where advanced medical support could determine mission success and personnel survival under the most challenging conditions. Her influence on military medical training extended beyond individual achievement to systematic changes in how the military evaluated medical personnel for combat assignments, with greater emphasis on technical competence and demonstrated performance rather than physical appearance or traditional strength assumptions. Today, Sergeant Major Jessica Chun serves as the Senior Enlisted Advisor for Special Operations Medical Training, where her systematic approach to combat medicine has influenced medical education throughout special operations communities and established new standards for medical effectiveness under extreme conditions. Her training methodology emphasizes technical competence and systematic medical procedures as essential components of combat medicine, producing medics whose analytical approach to trauma care reflects her demonstration of how proper medical training enables life-saving performance when combat conditions test every aspect of medical knowledge. The courses she developed integrate systematic trauma assessment with advanced medical procedures and tactical awareness training that enable effective medical care under conditions that challenge conventional medical training and force medics to operate beyond normal capabilities. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, who had initially supported Jessica's unauthorized rescue mission, now serves as Deputy Director of the Special Operations Medical Training Center, implementing programs that incorporate systematic medical techniques based on lessons learned from Jessica's performance and subsequent operational innovations. Jessica taught us that effective combat medicine requires systematic preparation and comprehensive medical knowledge rather than just physical strength, Rodriguez reflects during interviews about contemporary military medical training. Her analytical approach proved more effective than traditional methods based on physical capability and aggressive instincts. The recognition extends beyond individual career success to systematic changes in military medical training that reflect Jessica's demonstration of how comprehensive medical preparation and systematic technique enable sustained performance under combat conditions that exceed normal medical training parameters. Her legacy continues through thousands of military medics who have been trained using systematic approaches to combat medicine, producing medical capabilities that reflect her validation of how technical competence and comprehensive preparation often determine medical effectiveness when combat conditions challenge absolute human limits. The small woman who was considered too delicate for combat operations proved that systematic medical training and comprehensive technical knowledge provide foundations for combat medicine that exceed obvious physical advantages, demonstrating that proper medical education and analytical thinking often determine survival outcomes when combat conditions challenge basic medical capabilities. Jessica's story demonstrates that combat medical effectiveness requires systematic approaches that integrate technical knowledge with tactical awareness and psychological preparation, producing medical capabilities that transcend individual physical limitations through comprehensive understanding of trauma medicine and systematic application of proven medical techniques. The convoy rescue that established her reputation as an exceptional combat medic continues to influence military medical training programs that emphasize systematic preparation and comprehensive medical knowledge as essential components of combat medicine, ensuring military medics develop capabilities necessary for sustained medical operations where combat conditions challenge basic human survival and require specialized medical expertise.